On a warm August evening in Charlotte, a young woman sat quietly on a light rail train, just minutes from home. Her name was Iryna Zarutska. She was 23 years old. She had already survived war. But that night, something terrible happened on the Charlotte light rail that no one expected. In a sudden and shocking moment, she was attacked with a knife. The attack was fast. It was violent, and it left her fighting for her life on the floor of a public train. People nearby screamed. Some ran. Others froze in fear. Within minutes, the train that was supposed to take her safely home became the place where her life ended. The city of Charlotte would never forget that night. But the full truth about what led to this moment, and who would later be held responsible, was only beginning to unfold. Iryna had come to Charlotte looking for a new start. She was a Ukrainian refugee. Back home, she had lived through the fear of bombs and war. When she arrived in America, she hoped for peace. She found a job. She made friends. Every day, she rode the LYNX Blue Line light rail to work and back home again. The train was busy, but normal. Most days, nothing special happened. Riders looked at their phones. Some listened to music. Others just stared out the window. Iryna did the same. She trusted that the city and the security company would keep passengers safe. But danger was already growing in Charlotte's transit system. Crime reports had been rising. Some people skipped fares. Others caused trouble on the trains. Security was thin. Many riders felt uneasy, especially at night. Still, most people believed nothing truly terrible would happen to them. Iryna was one of those people. She boarded the train that August evening like she always did. She found a seat. She settled in for the short ride home. The doors closed. The train began to move. At first, everything seemed ordinary. The train pulled away from the station. Passengers sat quietly. The city lights passed by the windows. Iryna had no reason to think this ride would be different from any other. She had no idea that a man with a long and troubled past was also on that train. She had no idea that within a short time, her life would change forever. The peaceful ride was about to turn into the most shocking moment of her young life and the beginning of a much larger fight for answers and accountability that would last long after that night. The attack happened so fast that many people on the train could not believe what they were seeing. Iryna fell to the floor. Blood spread across the seats and the floor of the light rail car. Passengers screamed and pushed toward the doors. Some tried to help her. Others called for help with shaking hands. The train stopped. Emergency workers rushed in. They worked hard to save her, but it was too late. Iryna Zarutska, the young Ukrainian woman who had only wanted a safe life in Charlotte, was gone. News of the stabbing spread quickly across the city. By the next morning, people all over Charlotte were talking about it. Many riders said they had felt unsafe on the light rail for a long time. Some said they had seen fights and strange behavior before. Others said security was almost never around when trouble started. The city promised to look into what happened. Police began their investigation right away. Detectives learned that the man who attacked Iryna was named DeCarlos Brown Jr. He had a long history of problems with the law and with his mental health. Officers arrested him and charged him with first-degree murder. At first, many people in Charlotte felt some relief that the suspect was caught. But that feeling did not last long. As more details came out, the public grew angry. How could someone with such a troubled past be free to ride the train and hurt an innocent person? Iryna's family was devastated. Her uncle, Frank Scott Haskell, struggled to understand how this could happen in a city that was supposed to be safe. He kept asking the same questions. Why was security so weak? Why were known dangers ignored? Why did a young woman who had already escaped war have to die on a public train in America? In the days that followed, the story grew bigger. News stations across the country reported on the killing. People held vigils with candles and photos of Iryna. Lawmakers started talking about new rules for pretrial release and mental health checks. The case became known far beyond Charlotte. But while the city talked about change, Iryna's family wanted more than words. They wanted real answers. As the weeks passed, the criminal case faced a major problem. Doctors examined DeCarlos Brown Jr. and said he was not well enough to stand trial. A judge agreed. The murder case was put on hold. For Iryna's family, this felt like another heavy blow. The man who took her life might never face a full trial. That left them with one clear path. If the criminal court could not give them justice right away, they would take the fight to civil court. They began preparing a lawsuit against the city of Charlotte and the security company that was supposed to protect passengers. The real battle for accountability was about to begin. Iryna's family knew the criminal case was stuck. The man charged with her murder could not stand trial because of his mental health. That left them with almost no way to get answers through the criminal courts. So they turned to a different path. They decided to file a civil lawsuit. They believed the city of Charlotte and the security company had failed to keep the light rail safe. They believed Iryna's death did not have to happen. In the months after the stabbing, the family and their lawyer began gathering information. They looked at old crime reports from the light rail. They studied how many times police had been called to the trains. They asked about security cameras, fare checks, and how many guards were usually on duty. What they found made them even more upset. There had been many warnings. Crime on the trains was not new. Riders had complained for a long time. Yet little had changed. The city and the security companies stayed mostly quiet at first. Officials said they were reviewing safety on the transit system. They talked about possible improvements. But for Iryna's family, words were not enough. They wanted real responsibility. They wanted the people in charge to admit that the system had failed. As the one-year mark of Iryna's death came closer, the family made a hard decision. They would not wait any longer. In August 2026, almost exactly 1 year after the attack, they filed the lawsuit in Mecklenburg County Court. The papers named the city of Charlotte and Professional Security Services. The lawsuit said the death was preventable. It said the city and the security company knew about the dangers on the light rail but did not do enough to stop them. It said simple steps like better staffing or stronger fare control might have saved Iryna's life. When the lawsuit became public, the story exploded again. News stations reported it across North Carolina and beyond. Many people supported the family. They said the city needed to be held accountable. Others argued about money and blame. Some city leaders said they could not comment because of the legal case. The security company also stayed silent. For Iryna's uncle and the rest of the family, filing the lawsuit was both a moment of strength and deep pain. They were still grieving, but they believed this was the only way to force real change. The case was no longer just about one terrible night on a train. It had become a fight over whether a city and its hired security team could ignore clear risks and still claim they had done their job. The courtroom battle was about to begin, and the pressure on everyone involved was rising fast. The lawsuit changed everything. Once the papers were filed in court, the story of Iryna Zarutska was no longer just a sad news report from a year earlier. It became a public fight. News crews returned to Charlotte. People argued online and in the streets about who was really to blame. Some said the city had failed its riders. Others said one man's actions could not be blamed on the whole transit system. The pressure on the city of Charlotte and the security company grew heavier every day. Iryna's family stayed quiet at first. They let their lawyer speak for them. The lawyer said the case was about more than money. It was about truth. It was about making sure no other family had to go through the same pain. The family wanted the court to look closely at the security on the light rail. They wanted records of past crimes, staffing numbers, and any warnings that had been ignored. They believed those records would show the danger had been clear long before Iryna boarded the train that night. In the weeks after the lawsuit was filed, the city and the security company began their legal defense. They hired their own lawyers. They prepared to argue that they could not control every single person who rode the train. They said they had rules and security in place. But the family's side pushed harder. They pointed to the many reports of trouble on the trains. They asked why stronger steps had not been taken when problems kept happening. The public debate grew louder. Some riders said they still felt unsafe on the light rail. A few said they had stopped riding at night. Others defended the city and said one terrible crime should not be used to blame everyone. Local leaders held meetings about transit safety. Plans for more cameras and better lighting were discussed. But for Iryna's family, talk was still not enough. They wanted the court to force real answers. As the case moved forward, A new and serious moment arrived. The family's lawyer received important documents from the city. Inside those papers were records that the family had been waiting for. The documents showed repeated warnings about safety problems on the light rail. They showed times when security had been thin. They showed that concerns had been raised again and again. When the family saw the papers, the pain came rushing back. But so did their determination. The records seemed to support what they had claimed from the beginning. The danger had been known. And still, the system had not changed in time to save Iryna. The lawsuit was no longer just words on paper. The evidence was starting to speak. And the fight for accountability was about to get even harder. The documents changed the tone of the fight. Iryna's family now had written proof that safety problems on the Charlotte light rail had been known for a long time. The records showed repeated warnings, thin security, and concerns that had been raised again and again. For the family, this was not just paper. It was evidence that the danger Iryna faced that night had not come out of nowhere. As the lawsuit moved forward, both sides prepared for a long legal battle. The city of Charlotte and the security company continued to defend themselves. They argued that no system could stop every act of violence. They said they had rules in place and that one person's actions should not place full blame on the entire transit system. The family's lawyers pushed back. They said the city and its security partner had a duty to protect riders when the risks were clear. They said simple steps could have made the train safer. Outside the courtroom, the case kept public attention high. Riders still talked about feeling unsafe at night. Community groups called for stronger security, better lighting, and real fare checks. Some city leaders promised reviews and upgrades. Others stayed careful with their words because the lawsuit was active. The debate was no longer only about one terrible night. It had become a larger question about responsibility. Iryna's uncle and the rest of the family stayed focused. They knew no court case could bring her back, but they believed the fight still mattered. They wanted the truth to be clear. They wanted future riders to be safer. They wanted the people in charge to understand that ignoring known dangers could cost someone their life. Months after the lawsuit was filed, the case remained open. There was no final ruling yet. No large public settlement had been announced. The legal process continued, slow and careful. But something important had already changed. Iryna's name was now tied to a public demand for accountability. Her story forced Charlotte to look harder at its light rail system. It forced leaders to answer questions they had long avoided. The young Ukrainian woman who came to America seeking safety never made it home that August night. Her death on the Charlotte light rail became more than a single crime. It became a test of whether a city would take real responsibility when its systems failed. The fight for answers was still going. And, because of Iryna Zarutska, that fight would not be easily forgotten. The lawsuit did not end quickly. Court dates were set and then delayed. Lawyers on both sides traded papers and arguments. The city of Charlotte and the security company kept defending their actions. Iryna's family kept pushing for the full truth. Time moved slowly, but the case stayed alive. For the family, every new court filing brought mixed feelings. There was hope that the system might finally face hard questions. There was also pain because nothing could change what had already happened. Iryna was still gone. The empty seat at family gatherings stayed empty. The phone calls that would never come still hurt. Outside the court, Charlotte continued to talk about the light rail. Some safety changes were promised. More cameras were discussed. Extra security was talked about for busy hours. Whether those changes would be real and lasting remained an open question. Many riders said they would wait and see. Trust, once broken, is hard to rebuild. What could not be denied was the power of Iryna's story. A young woman who had escaped war had died on a public train in a major American city. Her death forced people to look at problems they had ignored for too long. It forced leaders to answer questions about security, mental health, and responsibility. It forced a city to confront whether it had done enough to protect the people who used its trains every day. Iryna's uncle and the rest of the family never claimed the lawsuit would fix everything. They knew the legal system moves carefully and often slowly, but they believed silence would have been worse. By taking the case to court, they made sure her name would not fade into just another news story. They made sure the questions about that night would stay in the public record. In the end, the story of Iryna Zarutska is about more than one violent moment on a Charlotte light rail train. It is about a family's refusal to accept that her death was simply unavoidable. It is about the demand that cities and the companies they hire take real care when they know danger exists. It is about the long fight for accountability that begins when one life is lost and others decide that loss must mean something. Iryna came to Charlotte looking for safety. She did not find it that night. But through the courage of those who loved her, her story continues to ask a hard and necessary question. When a city knows the risks, what must it do to protect the people who trust it? That question remains. And because of Iryna Zarutska, it will not be easy to ignore.